Shalom, my name is Yair Davidiy. I'm speaking to you from the land of Israel. Today we're about to discuss a very important point. We are going to discuss something concerning the lost 10 tribes being in the West, being amongst Western nations. That is where we find the lost 10 tribes today. That is where they are. And we trace them through historical studies, through biblical studies, through rabbinical studies, through every field of information that somehow or other has something to say on the subject. That is where we go to, that is where we find proofs about it, and we have proven it. Now, we have proven that the lost 10 tribes were in Western areas, and we have shown how they were in one area and how they moved to the other. We are given quite credible, acceptable, substantiated evidence with references from archaeology, from mythology, through linguistic studies, through all kinds of sources that all confirm and all point together in the same direction, showing how the 10 tribes were originally in the land of Israel. There were 12 tribes of Israel. They were separated into 2 separate kingdoms. The northern kingdom was taken into exile, taken into northern areas. It moved by 2 different pathways. One pathway went by sea with Phoenician and Philistine, Minoan, so-called Minoan ships, taking them to the west and resettling them in western areas to produce mineral and agricultural resources for the Assyrian Empire. Another section was taken to the north, and from there it moved in stages overland, and it also went to the west, and they converged in the same areas, and they came together, and they were in that region. And we have proven this, and we have shown how they were in that region and how they moved. Now, it might be that someone will come along and say that something in their explanation is not right, or they disagree with it, or it doesn't resonate with the concepts they've already acquired, that are already ingrained within them through their general reading. There's not what is conventionally accepted, and they will bring up all kinds of reasons as to why they should not accept it. So it doesn't really matter. It matters, but it's not the major point. The major point is that they were in one area and they disappeared. That everyone agrees with that. Archaeology, everyone, the Bible, everyone says they were there. They disappeared. Suddenly they reappeared in another area, and we explain how they got from one area and moved to the other. But even if you do not accept the explanations, the fact is that they did reappear in the second area. We have a DNA study. Sometimes you have DNA studies which say that the people in this region are related to someone, people in another region, because they have the same DNA. And first of all, we think in some cases it's not exactly that way. There might be other elements involved. There might be environmental influences and so on. But conventionally that is how it's presented, and they say that since these people have the same DNA, therefore they are related. Therefore at some stage in history there must have been a movement from one area to the other. When and how this movement took place, that's your problem. Find it, solve it, and give an explanation of your own. And even if the explanation is wrong, the fact remains that this movement took place at some stage or other. We might, for instance, as an analogy, have a case in New York. For instance, there might be someone named Joe Smith. Joe Smith was in New York. Suddenly he is talking with evidences, with signs that he was about to take off, to disappear, and in fact he did disappear. And in fact he did disappear. So we hire a private detective to tell us where he went to, and the detective comes along and gives us proofs, gives us evidence as to where Joe Smith went to. And he says he got on a certain flight and he flew to London, and he has these proofs, and it seems credible enough. But someone or other disagrees with it. Some people might disagree with it. There's something wrong with it. Something doesn't resonate with what they think might have happened. So we leave it as it is. Shortly afterwards we have information that Joe Smith really is in London. Joe Smith is in London, therefore Joe Smith moved to London, and whether he got on that specific flight that the private detective told us about or not is of secondary importance. It is important, but it's not the main point. The main point is that Joe Smith moved. So too we have this information that the Lost Ten Tribes moved. They moved from one area to the other because they disappeared from one area and they reappeared in another. And what proofs do we have concerning their reappearance in this area? So we have the Israelites reappearing amongst Celtic peoples. And the Celtic peoples, we're not saying that everyone, all the Celtic peoples were descended from Israelites. We are saying that the Israelites reappeared amongst them. They were an element amongst them. They were important there and they reappeared there. And that is a first point. That is the primary factor. That is the first proof that needs to be established, accepted, and from then we can work on, we can clarify other information, how they got to where they were, what exact percentage of the population they were or are today, and other details. But first of all, the point of them having moved is what must be accepted. That is what must be proved, and that is what is proven. And the Celts called themselves Hebrews. They called themselves Iberi. Iberi was the name that the Celts applied to themselves. We have proven this. We have an article on the subject. We have a couple of articles, in fact, on the same theme. We also have a very successful video talk on this matter, which is the most successful video we have produced so far, at least according to the number of people who have watched it and the favourable reactions we have had from it. Because this is the truth. It is the truth that the tribes of the Celtic peoples refer to themselves on the whole as Iberi. Iberi is a name, a place name, a toponym, and an ethnic name, an ethnonym that is associated with Celtic peoples. And Iberi is related to the Hebrew Ibri, or Ivri, or A-Ivri, or A-Iberi. They are the same dialectically, they're just variations of the same expression meaning the Hebrew. And that is what the Celts call themselves. And we also find other names amongst the Celts proving their Celtic ancestry. Other names amongst the Celts proving their Hebrew Israelite ancestry. And the Bible also confirms this. The Bible says that the lost 10 tribes would be amongst Western peoples. In the end times, the Bible says that the lost 10 tribes would possess the gates of their enemies, the gates of those who hate them, that is strategic thoroughfares on an international level, as the sages explained. This is what happened, this is what the British Empire did, and this is what the Americans are now doing, and have always done. The British and the Americans together have always tried to establish themselves in places of potential entry into areas that are liable to be hostile towards them. These are the gates of their enemies, strategic points and bases, and this is part of the defence and overseas strategy of the Israelite nations, of English-speaking peoples. And we also find Hebrews amongst other peoples, amongst the Dutch, amongst the French, a portion of them, amongst the Scandinavians and other peoples in Western Europe. And we have proofs of this. It says that the lost 10 tribes would be the battle axe of the Almighty, the policeman of the globe. This is what the Americans before the British were. It means that they would defeat Edom, meaning Germany and related European nations, which is what they did. That they would rule over other peoples, that there would be a light to the Gentiles, an uplifting nation, a teaching nation to the Gentiles, that they would be symbolized by a lion and a unicorn, that they would dwell on the geographical extremities of the land masses at the ends of the earth as they do, that they would be immensely multitudinous, have a great number of people, and they do, on the world scale, that they would possess all the minerals, most of the minerals and the agricultural resources on an international level. That is, the surplus of these materials would belong to them, as it does and has done for the last 150 years or so, and even before then. That they would be associated with the Atlantic Ocean area, that they would be also associated with Australia. They would be in several oceans, and other proofs. All of them bring them all together. They all show that as a composite whole, that they may apply only to one group of peoples, that is, English-speaking peoples, and as well as their related kinfolk in Western Europe who are also part of the lost 10 tribes of Israel. They are from the other tribes, whereas the English-speaking peoples are dominated by Ephraim and Manasseh, which are the tribes of Joseph. Also, there was to be a path of megalithic monuments tracing pathways of migration from the land of Israel to the places where they would be in the west, as Jeremiah chapter 31 tells us, and this is what we find. To see our explanations to this verse based on the Hebrew and based on a rabbinical commentary, which confirm this explanation as does archaeological examinations. And so now we are going to discuss one specific piece of evidence, one specific name in the West, which is a small portion of a jigsaw puzzle, but it illustrates the others. And when we take this piece of evidence and we apply it in its context, and we apply others, hundreds of others like it, and we put all together, we come to a body of evidence which is incontrovertible. So the specific point we're about to discuss now concerns the name Geber. Geber. Geber in Hebrew means overcome. A Gebar is a hero. The hit Geber means to overcome. And heroes of David, Gibori David, the heroes of David were Giborim, they were heroes. So this name Geber applied to them. So to Esau, the brother of Yaakov, Esau, the brother of Yaakov, was called Giborzai, the hero of the hunt, a great man, Giborim. And this name is also found as a place name, and it is found amongst a family of administrators in the time of King Solomon. We see this in 1 Kings, chapter 4, verses 7, 13 and 19. It says that Solomon had 12 officers over all Israel. The son of Geber in Ramoth Gilead. To him pertained the towns of Yair, the son of Manasseh, which are in Gilead, and so on. And then Geber, the son of Uri, was in the country of Gilead, in the country of Sihon, king of the Amorites, and Og, king of the Bashan. And he was the only officer which was in the land. So here we have this name Geber. We have Geber and the son of Geber, more or less in the same areas, 2 out of the 12 officials of King Solomon, and they more or less rule over the region east of the Jordan. And they are associated with Manasseh and with Gilead and with the cities or the townships of Yair. And we found these similar associations when in the West amongst the Celts, we find this name applied. We have. Before we go on, it is worth reminding ourselves that this is not that for this information we do not only rely on biblical sources. We also have the geography of Ptolemy. Ptolemy was a non-Christian, a non-Jewish, pagan, as far as we know, geographer. He wrote books on geography in about the hundreds, in about 100 CE, or around about that time. And later on, what he wrote was copied up and made into maps by scholars who came after him. And in his geography, he mentions the region of the land of Israel and surrounding areas. And there he recalls the Rahabani, meaning Reuben, east of the Jordan. The Mesani, meaning Manasseh, in the same area where Manasseh was. The Korkobani, meaning the sons of Horki, son of Gad, in that region. The Bethani is another way, in Aramaic, is a way of pronouncing Bashan. The th and the shin interchange. Bethani. And we also have Geber. He mentions a place called Geber in the region of Bethani in Bashan, and of the Mesani, meaning Manasseh. We also find archaeology tells us of a house of Geber, a ruling dynasty in northern Syria, which was actually an enclave of Jews from Judah, which was attached to the 10 tribes of Israel, as we have shown in our studies, as the Bible indicates existed. Judah, which was to Judah, which belonged to Israel in the north, and this region was ruled over by a local dynasty known as the House of Geber. So with the same name Geber, so we find this name in archaeology in the same region, this region that we're talking about where the House of Geber ruled. We also find the Dananu and an enclave from Dan, as the book of Judges told us, was established in that area. And we have here this name Gebar, and so too Assyrian inscriptions mentions a city named Gebar in the same region of northern Israel. And later on in Britain we find to the northeast of Eberacum. Eberacum is another name for York. Eberacum means a city of the Iberi, has this root name Iberi, meaning, which is found all over the Celtic area. This name Iberi means Hebrew. So Eberacum also contains this root name, is the name then given to the city of York. And to the northeast with the Parisi from Perish, from the tribe of Manasseh in that region. And so too we have the Gabron Tovises with the same root Gabron Tovises in this region. And incidentally, this name you find amongst the Anglo-Saxons, they also use this name Geber, or a derivation of it, Geber. They use it to in the similar ways used in spoken Yiddish and spoken Hebrew. They use it as a rich benefactor in Yiddish, and Anglo-Saxon use it to denote an independent peasant, a Geber, a person who stands on his own strength. And later, it's also found in Latin. We have the root gubernari, to steer, direct, guide, govern, and that is also where we get the word govern, governor, from. And the English usage denoting an independent person, an independent peasant, is closer to the Hebrew original than the Latin is. We find amongst the Celts and Gaul, who are also partially of Israelite descent, we find a people known as Geber. According to, we find a city of Gabromagus with its root, the Virgo Bretis, in the territory of the Edoui of Gaul. And in the Celtic region of Germany, we find Gebreta, a Celtic people known as Gebreta, and we also find a Celtic group called Guberni in what is now Holland. In Ireland, there was a tribe called Gabraic, a place named Gablan, modern-day Galan. A king of the Picts in northern Scotland was also known as Gablan. Also, the people of the Lagan in eastern Ireland were known as the Geber. So we have this root. And we also, in these same regions, we find associations with names recalling Yair, and recalling Gilead, and recalling Manasseh. And these names are associated with the appearance of names with this root Geber. And this reflects the reality that also existed in biblical times. So this is a proof of Israelite origin of the peoples in the West. It is only a small indication. One could attribute it to coincidence, but taking this and other hundreds of other factors together, we get an overall body of evidence which is quite convincing.